In 2022, a man named George Santos ran for the US Congress in the 3rd Congressional District of New York State. He indeed won the election, but he became mired in controversy before he even took office. In December of 2022, the New York Times published a damning investigation. During his election campaign, Santos allegedly lied about numerous aspects of his prior experience. This triggered an ethics investigation. In December of 2023, the House of Representatives voted to expel Santos from his seat. It's very rare for a member of Congress to be expelled. This is only the 6th time it has happened in the history of the country. But losing his job was the least of Santos's concerns. In the summer of 2024, he pled guilty to charges of wire fraud and aggravated identity theft. In April of 2025, he was sentenced to 87 months in prison, which is a little over 7 years. While George Santos was a politician, this is not a political channel. We're not going to talk about any of his policy positions, as this is largely irrelevant to the story. The fraud allegations against Santos are more than interesting enough on their own. This video was brought to you by Clean My Mac, a powerful tool to make sure your Mac is working to its fullest potential. The creative team here at Wall Street Millennial drives their Macs hard every day, working on researching and editing these videos. So it's very important to make sure that our machines are free from useless bloatware, unused files, and even potentially harmful malware. Clean My Mac makes it incredibly easy to run a scan to make sure your Mac is running at the top of its game. After running for a few minutes on my computer, it found multiple performance enhancements and upgrades available for my Mac. After running those enhancements, I saw a noticeable improvement in my computer's speed. The best part is, it actually saves me money, because now I don't have to spend thousands of dollars on a brand new computer for at least an additional year or two. You can try Clean My Mac risk-free with their 7-day free trial, and viewers of this channel can get 20% off when you use the code MILLENNIAL at checkout. So click the link in the description to start cleaning your Mac today. And now back to the video. George Santos was born in 1988 in New York City. His parents were Brazilian immigrants. Santos attended Baruch College in New York and went on to have a successful career on Wall Street. Specifically, he claims to have worked for Citigroup and Goldman Sachs, two of the largest investment banks in the country. After rising the ranks of Wall Street, he became a private real estate investor, owning 13 properties. He also founded a company called the DeVolder Organization. Santos described DeVolder as a capital introduction consulting company. It appears to be some type of company that helps third-party investment funds raise capital from investors. Having accumulated enormous wealth from his real estate investments, Santos founded an animal rescue charity called Friends of Pets United, which saved more than 2,500 cats and dogs. During his 2022 congressional campaign, Santos repeatedly touted his business accomplishments as evidence of his competency. This campaign strategy was successful, and Santos indeed won the election. In late 2022, the New York Times conducted an investigation which cast doubt on Santos's entire story. Firstly, they contacted Baruch College. Baruch had no records of George Santos ever being a student there. They then contacted both Citigroup and Goldman Sachs. Neither of them had any records of ever employing Santos. Furthermore, Santos claimed that he was an associate asset manager at Citigroup. The problem is, Citigroup sold its asset management business in 2005, before Santos claimed to have worked there. It was impossible for Santos to be an associate asset manager at Citi because this job title did not exist at Citi at the time. There is no evidence that he owns any properties in New York. There is also little evidence that Friends of Pets United exists. Normally, charities register with the IRS as nonprofits. No such registration existed for Friends of Pets United. When George Santos was a teenager, he and his mother returned to Brazil where they lived for a few years. In 2008, at the age of 19, Santos stole a checkbook from an elderly man and used it to make $1,300 of fraudulent purchases. He was arrested and pleaded guilty, although he did not serve any time in prison. It appears that he moved back to the US while the case was ongoing, and the Brazilian authorities couldn't locate him. Santos's fabricated life story was incredibly sophisticated. He would fabricate even the most minute details. For example, in 2022, he told a New York radio station that 4 of his company's employees were killed during the Pulse nightclub shooting of 2016. Santos's company was based in New York, while the Pulse nightclub was in Orlando, Florida. It seems unlikely that 4 of his employees would all travel all the way to this one nightclub in Florida on the same night. The New York Times looked at all 49 of the victims and could not find any evidence of any of them ever having worked for Santos's company. Here we can start to understand the compulsive nature of Santos's lying. He always tries to keep himself at the center of attention, so when the topic of gun violence came up, he immediately concocted a story in an attempt to give himself more credibility. Santos also attempted to garner sympathy. He claimed that his grandfather was a Holocaust survivor, and his mother was in one of the Twin Towers during the 9/11 terrorist attacks. Neither of these stories are true. During his congressional campaign, Santos made great efforts to portray himself as a successful businessman and the personification of the American dream. The reality was very different. In 2015, Santos was evicted from his apartment in Queens after failing to pay rent. In 2017, he was evicted from another apartment after failing to pay rent for 5 months. While Santos lied about working for Citigroup and Goldman Sachs, in 2019 he was finally able to land a job on Wall Street. He started working for a small company called Linkbridge Investors, where he received a salary of $55,000 per year. While that's not horrible, it's a far cry from the real estate tycoon he claimed to be. Eventually, he left Linkbridge and got a job at a Florida-based company called Harbor City Capital. On its Facebook page, Harbor City Capital describes itself as a multinational enterprise that specializes in digital marketing arbitrage, digital private equity, and venture capital funding. As it turns out, Harbor City Capital was a Ponzi scheme, which the SEC shut down in 2021. The New York Times investigation was published in December of 2022, after he won the election but before he was sworn in. So by the time he arrived in Washington, D.C., he was already clouded by controversy. Shortly after Santos was sworn in, the House Ethics Committee opened an investigation. In November of 2023, the committee released a report of their findings. The report is over 1,000 pages long. We'll quickly skim through the most damning parts. They confirmed a lot of the New York Times allegations about his fake education and work history, but they also found a lot more. Political campaigns require funding. You need to pay for advertisements and campaign events. Political campaigns are typically funded by donations. But if the candidate is rich enough, they can use their personal wealth to fund their campaign. You can give money to your own campaign as a donation. Alternatively, you can structure it as a loan. Once the campaign raises money from other donors, this can be used to pay back the loan. Santos ran for Congress twice. He had an unsuccessful run in 2020 and a successful run in 2022. During the first run, he claimed to have lent $80,000 to his own campaign. The campaign eventually paid him back $32,000. The problem is, most of this $80,000 never existed in the first place. In reality, he only lent $3,500 to his campaign. So he lent $3,500 and got $32,000 as repayment. During his 2022 campaign, he claimed to have lent $715,000 to his own campaign. This was also fake. It appears that Santos was never repaid for these sham loans. There are a couple of potential motivations. The receipt of these loans made the campaign appear financially stronger than it actually was. This was necessary to gain the support of the National Republican Congressional Committee. It's also possible that Santos intended to eventually repay himself for these fake loans. Santos also used campaign funds for personal expenditures. For example, he spent $2,300 to stay at a resort in Atlantic City, New Jersey, $3,300 for an Airbnb stay in the Hamptons, $1,400 for a spa in New York City. Within a couple weeks of the report's release, the House of Representatives voted overwhelmingly to expel George Santos. He left Washington, D.C. on December 1, 2023. In May of 2023, while George Santos was still a serving member of Congress, the Department of Justice indicted him on charges of fraud and campaign finance violations. In November of 2021, Santos and his associates founded a company called Redstone Strategies, LLC. Redstone was a consulting firm that worked for Republican electoral campaigns. Santos and his associates contacted donors who were interested in contributing to his congressional campaign. He told them to contribute the money to Redstone Strategies. Redstone would use the money to fund television advertisements and other campaign-related expenditures. In reality, the money was transferred to Santos's personal bank account. Santos used the money to fund cash withdrawals, personal purchases of luxury designer clothing, credit card payments, a car payment, and payments on personal debts. In 2020, the US Congress passed the CARES Act, which provided enhanced unemployment benefits. This was designed to provide relief to people who lost their jobs due to the pandemic. In 2020, Santos applied for enhanced unemployment insurance. In 2020 and 2021, he received approximately $25,000 of unemployment benefits. The problem is, Santos was employed during this entire period. He was working for Harbor City Capital, collecting a salary of $120,000 per year. Remember, Harbor City Capital was a Florida-based investment company that turned out to be a Ponzi scheme. In August of 2024, Santos pleaded guilty to charges of wire fraud and identity theft. He was released on bail as he awaited sentencing. Instead of retreating into disgrace, Santos decided to embrace his newfound fame as a con man and liar. He started a YouTube channel and podcast called Pants on Fire. He invites guests onto the show where they discuss politics and current events. After watching a few episodes, I still don't really understand its purpose. It seems more like a comedy than a serious political podcast. The Pants on Fire podcast has been a commercial failure, with most of the episodes only getting a few hundred views. George Santos isn't the only white-collar convict to attempt a YouTube career. Martin Shkreli served 4 years in federal prison for securities fraud. Upon his release in 2022, he started publishing YouTube videos where he teaches people about finance. Shkreli's followers believe he's a great genius and follow him for his financial wisdom. But if he was really such a great investor, why would he need to resort to securities fraud to make money? In January of 2025, Shkreli interviewed George Santos on his YouTube channel. They talked about quantum computing. George Santos has zero qualifications of any kind. Why you would want to ask him about quantum computing is unclear. If you're one of the few fans of the Pants on Fire podcast, you may soon be disappointed, as there won't be any new episodes coming out anytime soon. On April 25, 2025, George Santos was sentenced to 87 months in prison, which is a little over 7 years. Alright guys, that wraps it up for this video. What do you think about George Santos? Let us know in the comments section below. As always, thank you so much for watching and we'll see you in the next one. Wall Street Millennial, signing out.